Well, here we are at Applegate House in Barton. We're at the Barton Bunker. It's an air raid shelter from the Second World War that for many, many years, well, since the war, was sealed up and nobody had been inside it. In fact, until the 1990s it was flooded. But in the 90s we had it sealed up, and since then it's dried out. But last year, for the first time in 2018, we opened it to the public and we had about 1,000 visitors came. It's right on the corner of quite a busy road through Barton, and so many people go past and have seen it but have wondered what lay beneath the surface. Well, this year we've opened it again as part of Heritage Open Days 2019. It's a public shelter, one of 12 that they constructed in Barton, and it was for people who were, I suppose, on the street passing by if there was an air raid. There were I think there were over 800 air raid alerts in the Humber region during the war, and over 80 actual attacks. Some people had Morrison shelters, which were steel shelters that they had in their kitchens. They could climb inside and it would protect them in the event of an air raid. Other people who had a garden would have an Anderson shelter, a corrugated metal steel shelter. But many people didn't have either, so they would resort to these public shelters. We think you could get about 50 people comfortably in this shelter. Though let's face it, if the chips were down, I think you'd squeeze a few more in as well. It's fabricated from concrete blocks. You can see the way it's been made. It's just sort of concrete blocks, quite small, only about 6 feet high, about 7 feet wide and about 30 feet long. We think it would have been decked out with wooden benches from end to end, and we found evidence at either end. There are two entrances and exits to it. We found evidence at either end to a sort of what we think would be a modesty screen. Presumably there would have been a toilet at either end, because if you were in the shelter for several hours you'd need that facility. But other than that, there were no facilities, obviously no electricity, no running water, and people would be in these shelters for several hours overnight and so on. Last year we came across several people who remember taking shelter in this shelter, so we've got first-hand recollections of this shelter. But it's a very special thing because, as I say, it's one of 12 that they built in Barton. They've all gone except for this one and the one at Castledyke School, which I think is now part of their open-air theatre, if my memory serves me right. So it is rather a special structure. We're from the Wilderspin School Museum, and we do get lots of school groups coming. It's a very hot topic in schools, the Second World War. In fact, today I think there's been quite a few children who are doing it in their school studies. So we're keen to work with Applegate House and the Options Group to get this shelter opened more regularly to school groups and to adult groups. Applegate House residents might like to use the shelter for their activities as well. There is also an air raid wardens post on the site, which we'd like to work with Applegate House to get open and I say use jointly with their residents and for interpretation.
My name's Alan. I'm a volunteer with the Wilderspin School, and today we've opened the bunker just to give people an idea of how horrendous it must have been to actually have been in a bunker, especially over in Hull, where they've got quite a lot of bombs and they've got quite a lot of plastering, and it must have been very frightening. And of course the people, even after they came out, when they were worried whether the home was still there, whether the street still existed, whether the budgie was still alive. And so it's just to give people an idea of what it may have been like then. If they close their eyes, listen to the bombs and just think about what could have happened. I brought along a few bits of badges and memorabilia. This is an actual World War II rifle, which was eventually given to the Home Guard, which were people over the age of 41 or under 18. 1.5 million of them eventually did home guarding, and this is just to give people an idea, a sense of what it might have been like here at the bunker.